The Versys has been in Kawasaki's line very successfully since 2007 when it hit Canadian and European markets. A year later it came to the US, albeit as a 650 twin-cylinder motorcycle, versatile, adventure tour, sport tour, city cruiser. I've had that motorcycle, recently sold it with 34,000 trouble-free miles all the way up to Dalton Highway to getting rusted in the acidic sands of Burning Man. Just a very fun motorcycle to own. Made me want to buy the new one. This is my own Versys 1000 SE LT Plus, the top of the line model with all the bells and whistles, lots of buttons, lots of features, lots of interesting modern amenities for these types of motorcycles that are touted as adventure tours, more of a sport tour, according to me. So stay tuned for a complete in-depth review of this truly awesome motorcycle. I'll tell you everything, what I like about it, what I dislike about it. There's quite a bit that I'm not super big on this motorcycle. Again, it is brand new. It's got about 100 miles on the clock now, so this is more of a first impression kind of thing. Truth be told, how much can you get to know a motorcycle after 100 miles? But I do know all the features, and I wanted to share that with you so you can make a better informed decision if you too are considering this. And I promise it won't be one of those typical reviews where I'm just talking in my helmet. We try to do more here at Pegasus Motorcycle Tours with beautiful footage and drone shots and that kind of thing, so you get a little more dynamic review. All right, let's get into the details. Zdravo y dobrodošli, bon dia, bem-vindos, servus, willkommen, buenos dias, bienvenidos, greetings riders, and welcome to another Pegasus Motorcycle Tours and Consulting review of my very own 2021 Kawasaki Versys 1000 SE LT Plus. Top of the line from this family of versatile motorcycles on sale with Kawasaki since 2008 in the United States. Back then there were 650 twin-cylinder motor, lighter, more agile, simpler looking, but very recognizable with the rear shock exposed, and kind of an attractive little bike. I test rode one and I actually was kind of surprised at how peppy it was. I owned it, actually got beat up quite a lot over the ownership of 35,000 miles of touring. Really, really fun motorcycle. And then this one came out and I wasn't immediately sold on the green. I think a green is a very, very particular color. You really have to like it. But I gotta say, it's grown on me. And the motorcycle itself is so full of features. I'm gonna discuss all these features with you, and I look forward to basically getting to know the bike with you. This only has 100 miles, so this is kind of like a first ride impression of the motorcycle, but I've tested all the features and I got the feel of a motorcycle. Again, it's being informed by my ownership of about 60 plus motorcycles across all classes, but one of my favorites is the sport touring class. I love bikes with luggage that matches, removable, lockable. You can stick a helmet in there. So I'm going to talk a lot about the luggage at the end because I can really go on and on about the luggage. Other than that, the bike is just so full of features. So let's get right into it. The Kawasaki Versys 1000 SELT Plus is the top of the line model sold in the United States. I think this is the only model you can actually get in the US. It comes in two colors, the green and the black and red. And honestly, I kind of like the green now. After owning it, I found that it's this high-end green that I've come to really appreciate. In the sun, even in the dark, under a moonlight, it's such a beautifully rich paint. This is, of course, Kawasaki's famous self-repairing paint. There's a top layer of the clear coat that makes it bounce back, basically, from simpler scratches. It's not going to repair itself from key scratches or zipper scratches, something that's deeper. But smaller stuff, if you scuff it with your boot, that kind of thing, because it is a 33-inch height, fairly tall motorcycle. If somebody's 5'8", 172 centimeters, it would bounce back from something like that, and fairly quickly. This is the same style used in high-end vehicles. Mercedes-Benz has its own, for example, but it takes a longer time. But on hot temperature, it's dependent on many factors. You got to look that up. But the paint, I got to say, grew on me. I'm talking about the paint first because it's very exclusive, right? There's a lot of people who are not going to own a KTM because it's orange. There's other people who's not going to want to own a Kawasaki because most of the stuff is green. Let that not be a factor, honestly. It grows on you. It's such good quality paint. and I'm a sucker for paint. I'll go to the auto show and I'll be on my knees most of the time, like looking at the bumper, because the paint, the quality of the paint to me tells a lot. So, and if you don't like it, you can get it in black. You lose some of the lines though, because Kawasaki has a lot of lines. Look at this front end. It's so aggressive. It's so mean looking. All of these little inlets for the air. I wonder if they actually do as much as they look like they do. It would be nice to see it in a wind tunnel, to see how the air kind of flows through here, because there's just so many little tubes and tunnels and everything is so aggressive. I gotta say, that's another kind of exclusive factor to Kawasaki. Every motorcycle in its line is just so aggressive in the front. Look at that beak, look at that whole front end. To me, I gotta say, with the 17-inch front, it looks a little off. I think the front wheel needed to be a little bigger to make that whole motorcycle front feel a little more adventure touring oriented as this motorcycle is being touted. I don't think it is an adventure touring motorcycle. Obviously, a lot of expensive plastic, very exposed, expensive exhaust system headers at the bottom, very exposed. You get very limited travel, 5.9 inches, I believe, front and rear. Again, 17-inch wheels, front and rear. And it's just not something that screams, ride me on dirt. I mean, I have. Yeah, we're not gonna do that. It's kind of like the Suzuki DL1000, the V-Strom, another motorcycle I've owned, and I've decked that out for adventure touring. So yes, you can do it. And the argument is you can ride anything. People have been around the world on a Vespa scooter, on a R1, on a Goldwing, on a Harley Electroglide. That's a moot point. You can ride everything as an adventure touring bike, but is this intended for that? Not really. This is intended for long distance sport touring, maybe even 2-up, very comfortable sport touring. You get just enough power for that, not crazy power, but you get all the amenities, which I'll talk to in detail. It's powered by Kawasaki's proven, albeit not all that charismatic, 1000, or better yet, 1049 cc. That's about 64, I believe, cubic inch. Inline 4, 16 valves, 4 per cylinder. It's got, I believe, a 38 millimeter intake by Cayenne, and obviously EFI. It's got, I think, 10.3 to 1 compression ratio, so kind of a very, very calm, not too aggressive motor. It's if you're buying a liter bike, that means the 650 is too small. 650 being continuously offered in the Versys line, that's too small. You need something more. Don't expect this to be a killer motorcycle. It's just the power isn't there. It's got 3 ride modes and then another one you can actually customize. And I've been riding it in sport mode the whole time. I think the road mode is too tame for my taste. The rain mode is just for the rain. And I mean, if you're going 55 miles an hour, you're trying to pass somebody, you're kicking it to the end, you know. In rain mode, you're barely even getting there. In road mode, it's a little more noticeable, but still not enough where it needs to be what you're expecting out of a motorcycle that looks like this and has these specs. And that's why in sport mode, I think, is where it needs to be most of the time for most people, especially when you start getting used to the power of the bike. Speaking of the power of the bike, this motor, which is shared among the Ninja, for example, pushes out, 118 horsepower and about mid-70s, 76, I think, foot-pounds of torque. Not a lot of torque. And you got to really rev it up there to get that torque out of there. So that's what I mean by saying it's a very uncharismatic motor. It's not something... People don't get a 4-cylinder inline tattooed on their biceps, right? I mean, I'm a sucker for the V-twin. I love me a big V-twin air-cooled. I got a California, Southern California produced American Eagle 113 cubic inch motor, and it's just, once you get on a V-twin, it's kind of hard. I mean, you're comparing it, right? But this is a different beast altogether for different purposes. So you want that kind of linear, not so aggressive, no vibration power. The vibration is super controlled. You don't get much of it at all. And when you're touring, when you're logging in tons of miles, you want all of that to be kind of diluted so that it doesn't affect your body as much. So there's that. The motor is satisfactory, like I said, and within the 3 ride modes and the 4th that you can customize, I guess you could get what you need out of this motorcycle. But again, don't expect this to be the Concours. I've owned the Concours. I reviewed the Concours. They still sell the Concours, pretty much the same MSRP, in the just over 18,000 right now, more in California, of course. And The Concourse has bigger luggage, more power. It's a 1400cc motor, a little more aggressive stance. Here you're sitting upright. Obviously, fully street motorcycle. I argue this as well to be one. But they seem to be kind of competing against each other because the Ninja also comes with luggage, right? Even the H2 comes with luggage. So it's kind of interesting. There's a lot in the sport touring line in Kawasaki that's being offered. Why would you want to decide on this one? Probably for all the amenities and the buttons and the tech that's in the bike. Speaking of the tech, this bike, the LT Plus, so there's a base model, the SE. In Europe, it's sold as a Grand Tour as well, where you can order three-piece luggage, 100-liter luggage, pretty impressive size. It comes with auxiliary lights, and it comes with engine guards and not engine guards, but the frame sliders and the GPS mount, and that's for another $2,000 more or less. That's what you get in Europe as the Grand Tour. And then here in the States, you get the LT Plus, which is everything except those things. Kind of interesting. You can always buy those separately. And I would always recommend when you're buying it, you buy the top case. If you ever decide to sell, it just sells much better, and it's a more attracting offer to potential buyers when it's a three-piece luggage that's color matched, and it's very versatile. It's very useful. This can fit a full-size helmet. We'll talk about that shortly. So what you get with the LT Plus is adaptive suspension. Basically, the suspension can be adjusted by a push of a button, something between 26 adjustments that you can ultimately customize. On the fly though, you can adjust between single passenger and luggage, or two passengers and or luggage. So there's those modes that you can do on a push of a button when you release the throttle, and the Showa suspension does it automatically. This is a very advanced system that Kawasaki kind of fine-tuned for this particular motorcycle. So everything is push button, and it's beautifully displayed on the TFT display. That part is pretty attractive. Once you have adjustable suspension that's push button operated, it's kind of difficult to go back to the traditional way of doing it, pulling out the tools and whatnot, and a little screwdriver and fine-tuning it. Here you can kind of play around, get to know the motorcycle and see what works for you. And I gotta say though, I'm riding in the single passenger plus luggage mode because I find the single passenger adjustment to be a little too soft and sometimes a little scary, to be honest, because I like to ride hard, and you're riding hard in a corner and then you hit some, there's a root of a tree that's underneath the asphalt or something. It takes you off your pace, and it can be a little squirmy. So I like the stiffer suspension. Again, I'm not very heavy. I'm 80 kilos, somewhere around there, 85 kilos. That would be 185 pounds, let's say. 5'8", 172 centimeters, and this bike is a big bike. It's got about a 60-inch wheel-to-wheel base and a 33 height of this seat, which is extremely comfortable. Two-piece seat. Actually, it's all one piece, I gotta say, but two-piece in the sense that the rider sits much lower than the passenger. The rider is supported by a backrest here, and the passenger actually dips below quite comfortably. It's very wide. You can munch out a ton of miles on this really great Kawasaki seat. And it does come with the rear rack included. But again, I would highly recommend that you invest in the original third luggage. Might as well, right? You can remove it if you're not using it, and it's just so useful to be able to leave your jacket, to be able to leave your back protector. Everything goes in there. It's kind of great. And the sides are reserved for your helmet and other things. Chaps for when it's cold, etc. So more on technology. You get heated grips. Of course you get ABS. You get a 12-volt outlet. Unfortunately, no USB. It seems obvious they should be adding USBs right now. Everybody's charging by that way. What else? You get a ton of information, and I argue some of the information that you do get is a little unnecessary. The TFT display is beautiful. It's a TFT display on the right side along with an analog tack, which makes it really beautiful, really traditional look with a modern kick, right? However, it's just so busy. There's so much information that does not immediately seem to be very useful at all. It almost seems more of a distraction. That would be a critique of mine that I've noticed. Let there be light. Interesting. So not all of them went on. So this must be far lights then. Yeah, no. So that's low beam, high beam. I don't know what that is. It seems like it's something because these 4 are not used for anything, but I don't know what that is. I guess we'll see. Not sure. Anyways, so there's all that information. Here you have what gear you are in, what mode you're riding, switchable by the push of a button as long as you're holding it. Rider mode is basically the customized mode with the traction control, literally playing around with a lot of things here. Here you see 2 people with luggage, etc. And then you have, let's see, rider mode. You have rain mode, gets rid of all of that. You have road mode and sport mode. So I ride in sport mode for most of the time. Here you have a little green indicator of where the weight is, and if you load the bike forward or load it back, I mean, it moves slightly. Again, totally unnecessary piece of info. Correct me if you totally disagree. The next one is the throttle, and the one next to it is the brake. So watch me when I control the throttle, and you actually hear the technology, the sounds of tech, right? And the brakes. Again, not really sure why that's important. You're not racing this thing. Nobody's watching you on Twitch as you ride. So arguably, right? So odometer, 103 miles. Brand new bike. Gas, of course. Time. KQS is the quick shifter that highlights when it's ready to be shifted without the clutch. And basically, there is a sweet spot, obviously, when you're going downhill, when you're going uphill, when it's loaded, when it's not loaded, that kind of thing. And that's something you just get to know over time. So, and here, by pressing the preload button, you can change and as it's flashing, it's being adjusted, you hear it. So that's kind of neat. And it's the KECS, Kawasaki Electronic Control Suspension by Showa. It's their EERA system, and you can see here there's nothing, no tools necessary, everything is push button, and I do like that a lot. Here's everything in that regard. So a little busy for my taste. There's a lot going on here, and if we turn on interesting. So the bike has to be on for the heated grips to work, which makes perfect sense. You get a ton of information, obviously coolant temperature, ambient temperature. I think you also get notified when these lights are on. So this comes standards on the LT. This is another very, very smart technology, and that is basically a cornering light. It goes on when you start cornering. It's an abrupt on and off. It's not like it's like a BMW X line where it kind of fades in and out, very, very luxurious feel. So it's on and off, right? And it's useful because as many of you probably might know, maybe even from personal experience, the biggest danger to sport tours, adventure tours, are dogs and wild animals. We just had a coyote walk over here and they just run across the road, especially at dusk. Deer, I mean, huge problem. So it's just nice to be able to kind of illuminate those corners a little better in corner. I think that should be standard. I don't know why it's so big. It seems a little obnoxiously large, but it does the job, so I'm all for it. And I do believe you get notified when it's on, which is kind of silly. It reminds me of, speaking of pointless signs, in Croatia and much of the Balkans, when you leave a tunnel, there's a sign telling you you left the tunnel. Picture of a tunnel with crossed out. I don't know why that's important, but in any case. So you get some of that stuff here, and it gets a little busy. The TFT display also shows you how much throttle you're applying, how much brake you're applying. Again, you're not looking at that in the moment at all. You're focusing on riding the motorcycle. And I don't even know why you need to know that. It's not very useful information. It's got like 16 idiot lights, or obviously they're all off now. It's a new bike, but 3, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So over 16 idiot lights, and I think 4 of them aren't even used for anything. They're just there. So it's kind of that feeling like, okay, it's a little too much unnecessary information that's making the TFT very, very busy, and it's distracting you from the road, I dare say. That's the part I don't like. I'm not a first adopter of any technology. I'm not a huge fan of too many buttons on a bike. And another thing I'm not a fan of is the clutch. I gotta say. The clutch is fine. The shifter is what I'm talking about. The clutch is actually a cable clutch. Whatever, they keep it simple, cuts down on production costs. Even the Harley Pan America, you know, $25,000 motorcycle has a cable clutch. So the idea is it's easier to replace when you're touring. It's simpler to fix. And that's true. As my partner will tell you, we got stuck on White Rim for 4 days trying to find a reservoir for a GS. After climbing a hill, the partner hit it hard, broke it, and we couldn't repair it because of course, BMW's closed on Sunday and on Monday, and by then the rains came in. We had to rent a Jeep with like 40-inch wheels just to get up there and fix the thing because of all the flooding. So I don't mind the cable clutch. It's easier to adjust and to repair, but the shifter I don't like. This has the quick shifter, Kawasaki quick shifter, and it's the weirdest feeling I've ever experienced on a shifter for a motorcycle. It basically feels like a very, very spongy brake. I mean, it's just so soft. There's no bottom. There's a bottom eventually, but none of it is very, very positive. So sometimes it's hard to find the neutral between second and first. If you're rolling up to a red light, I've noticed you actually have to stop, put it in first, back to neutral. Maybe that's just the quirks of a brand new motorcycle and that'll get worked through, but when you hit first, there's just another, at least probably like an inch of travel, and it's all very spongy. I don't like it. I don't think a shifter or shifting should be soft on a motorcycle. Not even the suspension should be soft. I think everything needs to be very crisp and clean. And to be very honest, I'm not really sure why you would need a quick shifter on a motorcycle like this. You're not tearing through the streets with insane power. I mean, it's not an H2, it's not a Ninja. You're not on the track. What's the point? You know, I mean, even my KTM has a quick shifter. That's a little more understandable because when you are climbing a hill where momentum is key, if you lose momentum, you're crashing, then you need to be shifting real quick. But you're riding this on a street to grocery stores, maybe to the next state for a little weekend trip, etc. You don't need to be quick shifting anything, to be very honest. I think it's another thing that adds features, adds bells and whistles, but ask yourself and go test ride one and see if it's something you like. I would really prefer a regular shifter on this bike, and it's a big thing for me. It's more things to go wrong, it's more things to maintain potentially, right? I've also recently purchased a BMW 40th anniversary GS850 for a client. That has a quick shifter as well. Didn't like it there either. So it's not just this quick shifter, although this one is very soft, as opposed to the BMW one, which is crisper. This one is very soft. If you know how to work a clutch, and by now you would, right? If you're investing in a $20,000 motorcycle, leader bike, then you're going to be able to shift in a split second. I mean, it's a no-brainer thing, and it's kind of nice to not lose that as well. The motorcycles are getting so alienating from the rider. Everything's becoming automated or in some way digitized, and and this comes from somebody who does ride an electric motorcycle. I own a Zero, and there's good and bad about that as well. So I'm not against that, but it is unfortunate to be so pushed away from controlling more of the motorcycle with every new invention. And of course, everything adds a lot of money to the price. So, point being, ask yourself, are you going to be using the quick shifter? I don't use it. It's always rougher than if I'm actually doing it myself, and I like shifting. I like shifting cars, I like shifting bikes. There's that. So, we talked about the engine, transmission, of course, 6-speed. It is chain driven as opposed to, let's say, the Concourse, which is shaft driven. So if you like tinkering with the sprockets, let's say, to change some of the power delivery or the RPMs at certain speeds, that's a positive. I don't think sport touring bikes need to be or should be chain driven, just because you're munching out a lot of miles, and chain adjusting is just a pain in the butt. Nobody likes doing it. It's annoying. You're changing a lot of chains. I mean, you're going through chains, every 15, 20,000 miles, depends on your riding style. Less, right? Depends how you ride. So I prefer shaft drive. My Concourse was a shaft drive. The bike I'm currently riding, my Honda VFR 1200, is a shaft drive, sport touring motorcycle, gorgeous bike. It's actually the bike that I'm actually kind of the polar opposite when it comes to styling. Nice. Costco. And it's a 2010, mind you. Then this bike, just because this one's so angular, so sharp, so aggressive, so angry looking. And the VFR is this gorgeous, swoopy, one huge panel on the side, pearl white, beautiful, beautiful bike. Stay tuned for that review. You can see it in my review of the smaller brother, one of my favorite sport touring bikes, the VFR 800. Check that out, the Interceptor. You can get a sneak peek of the 1200. So I really love sport touring bikes. Needless to say, again, if you look through the playlist, you'll see every, or nearly every, motorcycle in that class that I've owned personally. The Triumph Sprint ST, the Aprilia, Fiatura. I'm forgetting. Take a look at the play. And I've owned multiples of these, so. The livery is crisp and clean because the engine is crisp and clean and smooth, right? So there's no issues there. You get what you need, and if you need more, just adjust it in the customized mode of riding that you can manipulate. So that's another thing. The bike does come with a lot of options to make it really, really your own when it comes to the suspension, when it comes to the ride mode, the power delivery, all of that. If you like tinkering with that, great, right? And I guess this is maybe an unfair critique, but I like to have things that are basically predictable. I don't like anything to be adjusting itself while I'm riding. I like to adjust it, and I like it to be there, and I adjust my riding according to that, because then I get to know the motorcycle, I know the suspension, I know the power delivery, and I adjust my riding to that. I don't like those factors to be adjusting themselves while I ride. I know this is we're going in that direction, and maybe in a few years we're not even going to need to talk about it because all bikes are going to have that, but I don't know. Again, it's the whole purpose of that alienating nature of new technology that makes you just know the motorcycle less because you don't need to necessarily. The bike is doing it for you. So that's another critique. Maybe fair, maybe not. The motorcycle comes with handguards, obviously plastic, but you're not going to be dropping it too much, right? And it's got an adjustable screen. The screen is beautiful. It's quite attractive. It's very wide. It's tall enough, and you can adjust it, albeit it's a manual adjusted with both screws, the kind that you see on lawnmowers, basically. Same kind of system that's used on my Yamaha Super Tenere 1200, another awesome motorcycle. And that's an adventure touring bike, big heavy adventure touring bike. Another bike you can maybe consider for the same kind of price point with a lot of technology as well, very similar to this one. And you adjust it the same way. You're not supposed to do it on the fly. It's kind of hard not to, right? But right now it's at the bottom, and when you adjust it at the top, you don't really feel much wind at all. But again, I'm not very tall, so there's that. Speaking of weight, it's a heavy guy. This is a heavy bike for a sport touring bike, right? This comes at 260 kilos, which is around 566 pounds. Pretty decently heavy bike, especially with the 21 liter, I believe that's a 5.5 gallon gas tank up there. So you're getting a lot of weight up there. And if you've ever wondered what that means, having so much weight up top, ride a KLR 650. A KLR has a 6.1 gallon tank, and basically all that weight is just kind of pushing you through the corners. I've just done a tour with another client of mine. He rides a T7, so Yamaha Tenere, the 700, and that sits very tall because it's got those Dakar roots, right? And I ride a KTM 790 with the gas tanks, slung at the bottom. And he complained how the bike doesn't want to turn because the weight is down low. You really have to turn it. When the weight is so much higher, it just falls into the corners itself, right? So it likes those big swooping corners. So same feeling here. Obviously, you get the traditional gas tank on top. I'm used to it now. But I do like my KTM. I think more bikes should kind of focus their energies and their weights down low as that bike has done. But this is a sport touring bike. You're not really taking it off-road. Very attractive gas tank overall with the paint. And this is kind of nice because normally up until now, every gas tank cover has been the same. And here you have California friendly deep down for the nozzle, because here of course we have to depress what is that, like a fume guard. That's only in California. If you ever come and gas is not dispensing, know that you need to basically depress the rubber seal. So some bikes have a very shallow nozzle here where the nozzle hits the bottom of the tank before that thing depresses, so you have to use both hands. This one doesn't. So it goes deep enough where it depresses the fume guard basically, and you don't have to use both hands to do it, which is kind of nice. Then you don't have to use any hands. You can just... So I like that. Kawasaki USA is headquartered up the road, so they should know that, and they do. So it's great. you get about 250, riding conservatively, miles of range. Not a whole hell of a lot when you're sport touring. I started to really hate going to the gas station. I'm doing it every day. You know, I ride a Jeep Wrangler at home, and I Land Rover, 12 miles a gallon kind of thing. I had a Gladiator, even worse, with the big tires. I reviewed that vehicle here. A great vehicle, but it's like I'm at the gas station. I live there. I know the guys by name, and it's getting kind of annoying. Another reason why I got the electric motorcycle, the Zero. Stay tuned for that review. It's just been nice not to have to go every day, right? So here, you're kind of, if you're touring long, 250 is not a lot. I mean, you're busting out 500 miles a day comfortably on this bike, which is an asset of the comfort features of the motorcycle. But that means you're stopping, more frequently, which isn't bad. Stretch out, that kind of thing. But it could have been more, but then it increases weight, etc. So the way I ride it, I get about 35 miles a gallon, let's say. 40 is maybe what you can see if you ride a little more conservatively. And I do think this bike is actually best enjoyed by more conservative riders, people who are mature enough not to go crazy on the road, but do want some of that power and enough power to ride with a passenger comfortably and have enough luggage for those weekend trips. So I think that's who the bike is for. Don't expect to do any off-roading on it. If you do, you're going to be crawling, obviously, and just don't drop it because everything is going to be expensive, scratch, etc. We'll talk about how you can repair some of that. So for example, the luggage, this piece here, if you ever do scuff it, it'll probably touch here first. And intelligently, kind of like the KLR luggage as well, which I reviewed here and discussed, because I dropped it, this part you can actually remove and you can replace it with another replacement part that comes in the same kit as this green stripe. So 6 or 8 little screws replaces that, and then you have a new piece of luggage that's actually shared among other Kawasaki's as well, like the Ninja, for example. So that's kind of nice. Since we're talking about the luggage, let's talk about the luggage. It's 28 liters between the two of them, 17 pounds, not overall too heavy. And then you get this massive top case that's color matched as well, and you get 100 liters of carrying capacity. And again, I highly recommend the top case. I like the luggage. It fits a full-size helmet in there, and I have a Shoei Neotech modular, fairly sizable helmet. Unlike the Concourse, you cannot fit a GoPro. You have to remove the GoPro if you're going to put your helmet in there, which is a pain in the ass. I think that could have been done better. And unlike my VFR 1200, you cannot adjust this strap, which for sure is going to break. Not the strap itself, but the little screws that are holding the strap. This is a Jivy style case. I don't know this for a fact, but having owned so many Jivies, I am willing to bet that this closure and these bolt style things are basically Jivy production, and that fails. And I fucking hate this closure. It's just the most annoying. I got a master's degree, 2 bachelors, and well-traveled 6 languages, and I cannot figure this bastard out. Like, I'm always working on how does this go together. My mind doesn't put it together. I don't know how to do it, So anyways, I don't like the closure, but the helmet fits nice. Unlike my VFR 1200, it would be really nice to have some kind of a padded sheet on side, so you're not always scratching your helmet up, right? Not really scratching it, but padding would have been nice. But again, no clearance. Just enough clearance for your GoPro mount, no clearance for your GoPro, and I really like that about the Concourse. Check out that review, because in a Concourse, like a gentleman, you come to work, you got your 4-inch binder you have in there, your computer, everything, right? You take your leathers off, your back protector, you put it all away, and you walk into the office like a gentleman with all your gear. Here, there's a little more labor involved. So another thing that I noticed I don't like about the luggage, in this particular case, I mean, it's a little angular, a little quirky, but it's okay. That's all. It's not a bad style. Taking it off is a little interesting. I actually had to look it up. I didn't know how to do it because it wasn't working. So you have to obviously unlock it, pull this little lever out, and then you have to slide it back. And I didn't know that was the case. So I was pulling on it and trying to figure out how it works. But if you slide it back, that's what the bike looks like without it. Much more aggressive looking, right? That looks like a sport bike now at this point. So very, very attractive. And I did notice that these little rubber seats here are starting to kind of show a decent sign of age. Nothing that can't be rubbed off. It is rubber. So, but anyways, so that's the luggage. The good part is it is shared among other Kawasaki motorcycles, so you can find them on the market should you happen to drop yours. So there it is. That's the luggage. Highly recommended. We've spoken about the suspension, the Showa inverted forks. Fairly good suspension, and again, everything is adjustable, push button operated. Pretty neat design. The brakes itself, let's talk about the brakes. The brakes are Kawasaki branded Tokiko. You get a 300 millimeter rotor in the front, dual rotors of course, 4-piston braking power in the front, and 250 and single in the rear. New KLR went away from this wavy style rotor and just a more solid round rotor. So I think this is purely aesthetics, but they work fine. They work like they should. Obviously ABS, I don't know, I haven't had too much opportunity to test the ABS. It's good to have it, clearly. So what I also do like in the rear here is you notice how the exhaust has been slung kind of low to allow for a full-size pannier here, and that's a good design. It's not as low as on a 650, right? The Versys 650, which again was a twin cylinder. I kind of wish they kind of stick with that, because the twin cylinder gives you totally different characteristics, a little more torque, a little more charismatic riding feel. But anyways, to each their own. So here we have a little lower slung exhaust, which of course doesn't heat anything that's inside the luggage. That's kind of a nice thing. And what is kind of interesting is that the headers are connected. The twin cylinders, two outside are connected and the two inner side are connected basically through a parallel bar. And I wonder how that affects airflow, because that seems like it would really disrupt the flow. And I'm not sure what's the purpose, why they need to be connected, but there's basically just a bar running right across them. So very interesting. I think that's telling you it's ready for the quick shift right there. And what I'd like for you to hear now, the sound this bike makes from this very neighbor-friendly yet very exciting exhaust. So much for the brakes, so much for the suspension. We spoke about the transmission, we spoke about the engine, we spoke about the paint, which again really is growing on me, and we spoke about the luggage. You get the grab rails and you get the top case carrier here that you can mount any top case to, but I highly recommend the Kawasaki luggage. The lights, really great lights. You get LEDs all around. The rear taillight is just gorgeous. For some reason though, they cheaped out and still using standard incandescent light bulbs for the blinkers. Kind of interesting. Whatever, I mean, that's not really a critique. It works, right? We talk about the gas mileage. We talked about the heated grips, the stance, very comfortable again. All day riding, you're square, you're not leaned. I can stand on this motorcycle, and again, I'm not very tall, but I'm kind of bent over in an uncomfortable way. So again, this isn't really meant for that. And this whole bracket flexes quite a lot. If you're the kind that steps on the foot peg to get over it, especially if you're trying to avoid hitting your luggage, I wouldn't recommend that on this bike, because this aluminum part, I think it's aluminum, it flexes quite a lot. It flexes too much to actually be comfortable to use as a stepper, right? And then you do have a bolted on subframe, which is kind of nice. Standard chain driven with a swing arm, and the standard traditional way of adjusting that chain. Nothing new there. So I think that's pretty much everything about the bike. I like it. I'm not going to be keeping it because I have my gorgeous VFR 1200. It's just a better, I don't know, there's just so much, obviously it's a 170 horsepower motorcycle. You get so much absurd power on that thing. And I do like power. I've owned the BMW K1200. Love the looks of that bike. I love the single-sided swing arm. I didn't like the luggage, sold that because of that factor. The Honda VFR has everything. Has a single-sided swing arm, has the looks. It's very hard to find nowadays. I have the only white one, I think, in the United States. Had to order luggage from Europe, and this beautiful pearl white and 3-piece luggage that sits very low. It actually sits like 8 inches or so lower than the predecessor, the VFR 800, which is one of my favorite bikes. I've had 3 of them. So I have everything in that bike minus all the technology that this bike has, and I'm enjoying it more, I gotta say. It's a more pleasing bike to ride for me at this juncture, mainly because of the shifter. I just don't like the shifter, but this is something I could get to grow into, but no need for this moment, right? So this bike gets to go to one of you. I hope this review has been helpful in making a decision. Obviously, it's an excellent motorcycle. Don't let my distaste of the new tech maybe dissuade you from it. Do test ride it. Maybe you love it. Maybe you do like the soft feel. Maybe you like all the buttons and everything. I think it's a little too much. I think it's a little too distracting. But again, the color is fascinating. Color is actually really grown on me. So if you're here, you're obviously considering the bike. If you're hesitant about the green, give it a chance. It'll grow on you too. It's just high quality paint. Everybody likes good quality stuff, right? So you'll enjoy it. Excellent motorcycle, a lot of tech. Kudos to Kawasaki for doing it. There it is. And another very important factor, which I'm proud to be a part of, is that this channel, 10% of the proceeds goes to children's cancer research towards that. As some of you who have followed this channel from the beginning know by now, my daughter went through a little scare, and my mother is a cancer survivor. Cancer has been involved so much, and this whole project was started in 2011 as the Pegasus Project for the American Cancer Society. So we'd like to keep that going. So 10% goes to a children's research center. At this point, it goes by a voting system. So every month, I like to hear from you in the comment section what place or what institution you would recommend. And I'm happy to send the money that way in Pegasus' name. So let's be a part of that. So thank you for watching. Appreciate you being here. See you in the next one. Nick, Mom.